This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Heather Sells. Schools and businesses across Venezuela remain closed as a massive power outage has crippled the Latin American nation for a fifth straight day. Much of the country plunged into darkness last Thursday, making what has already been a challenging few months even more difficult. Opponents of President Nicolas Maduro say 17 people have died as a result of the blackout. The government blames the U.S. for launching cyber attacks on Venezuela's electric grid, but experts say it is the outcome of years of neglect and underinvestment. Tempers are boiling over as pro and anti-government demonstrators took to the streets of the capital in dueling marches. The United States and about 50 other countries are urging Maduro to step down. And joining me now is CBN senior international correspondent George Thomas. George, what do we know about how Venezuelans are coping with this outage?
Yeah, well, we just saw images of people all trying to get their cell phones connected. Just imagine you have no electricity. It's about 70 degrees on average this entire week. People are frustrated. The schools are closed. Businesses are closed. Hospitals are closed. The oil industry is not pumping out oil. Keep in mind, Venezuela has one of the largest reserves of oil in the world, second to Saudi Arabia. Nothing is functioning in this country. There is no food, no medicine. And this was the case before all of this. And now just imagine now, keep in mind, you had rolling blackouts, very common in Venezuela over the last 10, 20 years. It's very common, 2-3 hours of power outages. But now there is like no lights on. I mean, it would come on, flicker.
And it's not just an inconvenience. I mean, we're talking about people dying here, so this is really serious.
Oh, absolutely. And the opposition says about 17 people lost their lives as a result of the blackout. But this is huge. I mean, there is so much frustration. On top of the political impasse between Maduro and Guaido, you have this process of no electricity makes life all the more miserable for the Venezuelans.
Now, the President Maduro is blaming the U.S. Is there any credibility to that?
No. I mean, no, because you know why? This is a country that has dealt with sanctions on one hand, but also the lack of investment in basic infrastructure, from road to electricity to water. Their electrical grid is an aging one. They have not invested money in it. A lot of that money was siphoned off for other projects, for personal benefit. So this is sort of a cascade of events that's taken place, and in the process crippled the electric grid in Venezuela.
How do you evaluate things overall right now? It's been 6 weeks since the opposition leader, presented himself, and still it seems like things are really at an impasse.
Very good word, and that it is. That's what it is. It is a stalemate, in essence. Today, the U.S. Treasury Department slapped sanctions on a Russian-based bank, accused the Russian-based bank of circumventing the sanctions that have been imposed on the Venezuelan government. But this is what we're at, Heather. We are at an impasse, a stalemate. Call it what you have. Both sides have these dueling protests almost every day, but there's no traction. And it seems that, again, it comes down to the military. It is very, very difficult to pry the military from the Maduro regime, because it has been entrenched in the Venezuelan from the days of Hugo Chavez. They made a pact with the military, and today the military is pretty much filtered through the entire ranks of the government. And to pry them and to say, listen, you give up Maduro and you take Guaido as the new leader, it's a very, very difficult divorce that the U.S. and Guaido is trying to force, and it's very difficult.
And we know that the U.S. is trying to get aid in via the border. Do we know if that is at all helping, where things are at?
Yeah, well, they delivered their 7th plane load of relief supplies. Right there, you see it landed today on the border of Brazil and Venezuela. But no, the aid is just piling up. They're getting ready. Obviously, they're positioned. But no aid is getting into the country thus far. They were hoping that about 2 or 3 weeks ago, there would be this dramatic moment on the border, that they would be able to get to aid across the border. That didn't happen. Again, we're at an impasse, and the United States is trying all kinds of things. The political pressure, the sanctions, and the outcry from some 50 countries around the world. Maduro, he's in there for a while.
Yeah, so much concern over the suffering. George Thomas, thank you.
You're welcome. Sure.
Yeah. Well, here at home, President Trump is reviving his border wall budget battle with Democrats in Congress, and he's asking for $8.6 billion for the wall in his new budget request. A border wall has been one of his biggest promises since he ran for the White House in 2016.
The wall, and it has to be built, and we want to build it fast.
But Democratic leaders in Congress warned the president this will lead to another government shutdown. House Majority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said in a statement Congress refused to fund his wall and he was forced to admit defeat and reopen the government. The same thing will repeat itself. We hope he has learned his lesson. But White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow says the president will not back down.
So, yes, he's going to stay with his wall and he's going to stay with the border security theme. I think it's essential.
So the stage may be set for another government shutdown. Our team in Washington, D.C. will have more on the latest in Washington on tonight's Faith Nation. You can catch that right here on the CBN News Channel. Well, the Trump administration is working on a proposal that would require other countries to pay the full price of American soldiers deployed on their soil. Officials say nations hosting American troops would also pay 50% or more for the privilege of hosting them. It's called the Cost Plus 50, and this plan would cost 5 or 6 times more for countries like Germany, Japan, and South Korea. Bloomberg reported that Trump's advisors have pushed back against this idea. Joining us now with more is David Maxwell for the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Tell us, some see this request for cost sharing as a real game changer in thinking about how we view our relationship with our allies and troop deployments. How do you see it?
Yes, I think it really it illustrates the transactional nature of foreign policy that President Trump has really embarked on. And I think it really kind of goes against the reasons that we deploy troops, not to defend these countries. We deploy our troops and station our troops overseas to serve our national strategic interests. And the benefit to the host countries is purely secondary.
That's such an interesting perspective. There's concern among critics that this will be viewed as an ultimatum by countries that have long resisted U.S. troops, like Germany and Japan, and that they might decide they don't want U.S. troops. Do you see that as a possibility?
Absolutely. I think that, this cost plus 50, could be, a real deal breaker for some. And then, of course, if a country asks us to leave, one thing the United States is very good at is leaving. If a country doesn't want us to stay, then we do go home. And so I think you could see us leave certain countries, which could really impact our strategic ability to project power, to conduct operations around the world. I mean, in effect, these bases around the world allow us to be a global power. And without them, we will not be the America that we have known for the last, 70, 80 years.
What do you see as the motive behind the Trump administration's request here? What would our interest be in this?
Well, I think it's purely financial. It seems to me from listening, and I don't know the president, I've never spoken with him, but listening to him and reading his tweets, he feels that we are providing a service to these countries and they are not adequately funding our presence. I disagree with that. Again, we are there for our strategic interests, and the benefit to these countries is secondary. And furthermore, if we were to remove our troops from these countries overseas, right now we have no place to base them. The Base Realignment and Closure Commission really has optimized our CONUS-based or continental United States-based posts and installations for the force structure we have in the United States. So to bring back, some 165,000 troops, fighter wings, the 7th Fleet from Japan, for example, we don't have the space to base them. So we either eliminate that force structure, weakening our military, or the burden is going to be placed totally on the U.S. taxpayer to build the facilities to house these troops if we want to maintain that force structure.
What do you predict is going to happen next? Do you think the U.S. might potentially back down? Do you think some countries will back out?
Well, I think from reading The Art of the Deal, I think this is an extreme negotiating position. I think it's clear President Trump wants countries to pay more. And so I think that he's probably, laid out this cost plus 50% as an extreme bargaining position. And I think what will happen is all the countries will pay some more, but not this much. And I think that, it's a negotiation, and President Trump is a deal maker. And I think he's showing us how the game is played.
All right, David Maxwell, thanks for your time and insights.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, in other news today, Covington Catholic High School student Nick Sandman's attorney plans to sue CNN. Attorney Lynn Wood told Fox News host Mark Levin that CNN's reporting on Sandman at the March for Life in Washington in January was, quote, particularly vicious, and the suit will be for at least $250 million. Sandman is the student who found himself at the center of a controversy following his school attending the March for Life event. Video of him standing face-to-face with a Native American man went viral. Reports went out that he and other schoolmates were confronting the Native Americans, and another group were at rallies that day. And Wood says Sandman, wearing a Make America Great Again hat, was falsely and directly attacked by CNN. Wood has already sued the Washington Post for $250 million over its coverage of the incident. Ethiopian pilots and flight crews held a mourning vigil today for the victims of an Ethiopian Airlines crash which killed all 157 people on board. The flight crashed on Sunday morning shortly after takeoff from the Ethiopian capital en route to Nairobi in Kenya. The crash follows a similar one involving a Lion Air jet of the same model in Indonesian seas last year. That crash killed 189 people. Boeing is sending a technical team to this latest crash site to help Ethiopian and U.S. investigators. The plane's black box has been recovered, but it is damaged.
You have to remember one thing in a plane crash. Generally speaking, an accident is not caused by some single event. It's a chain of events that lead up to that crash. They're going to be looking at all those parameters, because when the National Transportation Safety Board, after their investigation completes, what they come up with is what they call a probable cause. They are going to list the requirements that they feel necessary to help prevent this from happening again.
And in response to the crash, all Chinese airlines have grounded their Boeing 737 MAX 8 planes as a precaution. A reminder to you to check out our CBN News Daily Rundown podcast with Caitlin Burke that deals with a behind-the-scenes look at a key story in the news every day. And you can find it at cbnnews.com on the show tab. Click on its title to listen and subscribe. Coming up, a look at what new groundbreaking technology that Israeli companies are creating.
CBN presents The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
We're going to talk about some of the incredible promises God has made to His children.
In Pat Robertson's newest teaching, you'll discover the I Wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation, and see amazing stories of God's promises in action.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Break free from stress and despair.
The Lord doesn't want you to live in fear, but to know the rewards given to those who love God.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit cbn.com. The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Because of its groundbreaking technology and competitive business atmosphere, Israel has been called the startup nation. Israeli companies showcased that technology at a conference last week, and CBN's Chris Mitchell shows us how it is changing the world.
Nearly 20,000 innovators and investors from almost every country came to see or signed up online for the largest tech meeting in the history of Israel, the Our Crowd Global Investor Summit.
The summit brings together extraordinary technologies like Beyond Meat that develop a plant-based meat substitute and many more. Very good.
They make water out of air.
We think that we found the solution for the entire world for the new source of drinking water.
They plan to connect the world through microsatellites.
There are 4 billion people in the world that are not connected. They need to be able to choose whether to connect, to be connected.
And they help the paralyzed get on their feet.
It's very innovative. It's perfect. It's so stable. And when I walked down the aisle with it, it was a dream come true.
Our Crowd showcased all these technologies. John Medved is the CEO and founder.
Our Crowd is the world's largest investment platform for investors to invest in startups online and in person at events like this Our Crowd Summit.
At the summit, investors meet innovators. Our Crowd democratizes capital by giving smaller investors an opportunity to invest in cutting-edge innovations, just like the large venture capitalists. After 6 years, Our Crowd is celebrating $1 billion raised for 170 companies.
But the bottom line is changing the world. They call it the double bottom line, making money and doing good.
What's most exciting about today's event is that we're focused on impact, on how startups can tackle global challenges, and how can startups really bring to humanity a huge impact for the better.
Medved explains it as an expression of tikkun olam, the Jewish concept of healing the world. Betty Wu Adams believes Christians can play a role.
God is our first entrepreneur. He created this world out of nothing for the first 6 days. I believe there's a calling for us as Christians to partner with Our Crowd as we invest in companies that's going to transform and change the world.
Medved sees the summit through the lens of the Bible.
It's a little bit biblical today because the nations are flocking to Israel to see what we can do to help tackle global challenges and how they can bring back those lessons to their own countries.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Our Crowd Global Summit, Jerusalem.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I Wills of God, the latest teaching from Pat Robertson.
Covenants are viewed as the most sacred and binding of deals, an oath that is never to be broken. America's earliest settlers made a covenant with God to serve and proclaim him throughout the earth. These days, however, Americans appear to have forgotten this covenant, and as Paul Strand reports, that can have dire consequences.
Christian leader Dutch Sheets explains how God's relationship with us is set by sacred covenant.
He even based our salvation on, I'm coming to bring a new covenant through Jesus. The shedding of his blood ratifies this covenant. It is a binding together that in him is unbreakable.
Early English settlers in America also wanted their new land to share such a binding covenant with God. Christian historian Eddie Hyatt says those who came to Jamestown in 1607 put it in their Virginia Compact.
To propagate, to expand the gospel, the kingdom of the Lord Jesus Christ, and to take the gospel to people who were lying in darkness and had no knowledge of the one true God. They said that's the reason they had come.
The Pilgrims stated the same in 1620.
Having undertaken a voyage for the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith.
John Winthrop, leading 700 Puritans to Massachusetts in 1631, said it like this.
We have entered into an explicit covenant with God to be his people in this new world. And they wanted to be that city on a hill. They wanted to be a model of Christianity for the rest of the world to see.
These early covenants pledged the signers to each other and to obeying the laws they'd form with God's guidance. Such compacts became the model for the U.S. Constitution, whose authors were also very much guided by their Christian faith. Historian William Federer.
George Washington, at the beginning of the Constitutional Convention, he said the event is in the hand of God.
So they saw the Constitution as being a very religiously based document. It was also a very covenantal based document.
Sheets says the makeup of the government was shaped by biblical passages like Isaiah 33:22. Writing in his book, Giants Will Fall, our nation's form of government was actually taken from Scripture. The Lord is our judge, judicial branch, lawgiver, legislative branch, and king, executive branch. The founders put God first and foremost in the Declaration of Independence.
It says right in there, appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions. So in this founding document, we appealed to God. We invited him to be a part of this American experiment.
The concept of this being one nation under God harkens back to Jesus telling Jerusalem in Luke 13:34 that he wanted to hide you under my wings, covering and protecting you. What happens, though, is parts of the nation don't want to be under God, disregard parts of the Constitution, and no longer honor sacred oaths.
We have walked away from covenant with him.
And even the marriage covenant, with the divorce rate soaring more than 300% in the 20th century. America, once the #1 exporter of the gospel, is now the #1 importer of illegal drugs and the #1 exporter of pornography. Author Jerry Newcomb sums it up.
A lot of the things that we're experiencing in America today are because we have disregarded God's covenant.
If America really is to be the place from which the gospel is spread to the whole world, then the salvation of billions hangs in the balance. Sheets says there's hope, but only if Americans return to honoring their covenant with God, because that makes us his family.
If a kid across the street I don't know, if they do something that's evil or wrong, I feel no responsibility to try to bring them back into the fold, because I'm not in covenant with them. I'm not in that relationship. God is the same way.
David Barton points out the faithfulness of the Lord.
I mean, we're told in Psalm 105, he keeps his covenant for 1,000 generations.
I don't think there's a stronger force in the world.
So there's a chance the nation can still someday completely fulfill the prophecy of destiny Jamestown chaplain Robert Hunt said in 1607 as he came ashore in Virginia.
He made this declaration, which I believe was prophetic. He said, from these very shores, the gospel shall go forth, not only to this new world, but to all the world. And that was just not very far from CBN.
It just takes getting back to covenant. As Joel 2:13 says, now return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, abounding in loving kindness. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
Well, American Idol has kicked off its newest season, and one audition in particular got our attention. Judges Katy Perry, Luke Bryan, and Lionel Richie broke out in song and went to church in a spontaneous rendition of Oh Happy Day. Take a look.
Oh, happy day, oh, happy day, when Jesus was, when Jesus was, when Jesus was.
Listen to that.
He washed my sins away. Happy day.
But I remember.
He taught me how. Oh, he taught me how to walk, fight and pray, to fight and pray and be rejoiced.
I'm so glad Katie's not touring.
In every day.
And that is all for today. We hope that you will join us next time. Have a great day.